Big news to talk about, of course, Adam O'Brien. We'll get straight to Matty with that. G'day, Matty.
Hey, boys. What's going on?
Mate, the big news up your way, and I don't know if you've had a chance yet to hear the press conference. I personally thought he was so classy in his exit, Adam O'Brien. Did you get a chance to hear him speak, Matthew?
Yeah, I did. He, I thought he spoke very, very well, and I think it was perfectly clear that Adam was, he alluded to that he was, I think he used the word. I think away from the press conference, I think he said to the club, I feel like I'm cooked. And, that's what the job can do to you. It's been a rough few years because, even when they made finals, that year when Kalen went on that amazing run, they made finals. For the majority of that season, Adam was under pressure then as well. You might remember there was the Tom-Tom started beating, but Kalen's return, his run, saved the season and alleviated a bit of pressure. But this year's been really, really difficult. And it's funny, it was when a couple of weeks ago when the Knights played the Cowboys, there was a bit of a rumour swept behind the scenes in the game that it was either going to be Toddy or Adam that we're going to get a tap on the shoulder at full time and replaced by Josh Hannay. And it didn't happen, but I don't know. I don't know whether at the time, if it was the Knights, if they decided at that point, listen, out of respect for Adam, let's just see out this season, and might have cost them the ability to possibly grab Hannay. I don't know, and maybe that is the reason that they've come out and done it all now. Because, they've been sort of constant denials. No, we're going to let him go forward. We're going to let him go forward. I suppose the question is, why did that change suddenly? I know it's been a really, things have started to erode in the last month. I think the big turning point for the team was that loss to the Warriors when they lost 20-15. I'm certain that was it. But the Knights really held their dukes up and showed a lot of toughness through the middle of the season. Mate, looking at that, the nature of that loss where the ball just fell into like a Halasima's hands, and when he showed that run, he showed all his God-given gifts and scored. But mate, I think that broke the spirit of the Knights, and I think to a certain extent Adam as well. And the season just fell away. So yeah, and I suppose now it's just who's going to be the next bloke, who's the next fella up.
Yeah, Matty, it's Scope here, mate. I suppose everyone wants to, everyone's going to be asking you over the next couple of days on all your shows who's going to be the coach. And, is there, once they sit down with the candidates and they go through the due process, with so many things factoring into huge decisions like this, Matty, will it be as simple as starting with all the candidates going, Kalen Ponga, Dylan Brown, Fletcher Sharp, what are you doing? How do you see it working? Considering how much money they've invested into those, invested into Kalen and Dylan specifically, but everyone at Newcastle has high hopes for Fletcher as well. Would that be the first part of the conversations with whoever's putting themselves forward for the job, Matty?
It's an interesting one, Scope. I think you're spot on. I think when you interview a coach, I think one of the things you do is you set a scenario. You can have a look at what the problem is. You foresee what is the problem that may occur going forward, and then you pose that question. Talking about that spine and how that jigsaw puzzle fits is certainly one of those. The other one could be the fact that, listen, we're a little bit, as far as our big yardage men, we're a little bit light. If we're going in against a big pack of forwards and we've got a lightweight pack of forwards, how are we going to beat them? If you go back, it's funny, Scope, I've got a story for you. It hasn't been told a lot. Back when the Knights started in 1988, they're going in, the total expenditure on the team was $90,000 on the whole squad.
Wow.
And they signed Adrian Shelford from Wigan for $35,000. So all the players were signed on very small contracts. They were all young guys, young, hungry guys from other clubs who was wanting a chance to play first grade. And, of course, there were match payments on top, but $90,000, right? So they're going, okay, what are we going to work with here? Now, they sat down to interview the potential coaches going into that season, right? And they interviewed a few different guys, and it went down to two men. It was in between Ron Willie and Alan McMahon. And the question, I'm trying to think who it was, but it really might have been Alan Bell, the old genius. And he posed the question to Alan McMahon. Righto, Alan, we're going to play Canterbury this week, right? You've got a young pack of forwards, lightweight pack of forwards. How do you beat them? How do you beat the Dogs this week? We need to win. And he said, well, Belly, what you do is, mate, he said, you actually get your outside backs and your wingers and you just drill them through the middle and you just keep making their big blokes miss and miss. You complete your sets, kick down the field and just swarm them with defence. Ron Willie replied, well, first thing I'd do, I'd go to church on Sunday and say a prayer. And Alan McMahon got the job.
Wow.
And I think that's an example. I think too often coaches go in for their interview and they don't ask the right questions. They don't ask applicable questions in problems that are gonna arise. And you're spot on there. I think one really big one is, what's the future for Kalen? What do you see him as? Yep. Well, okay, where does Fletcher Sharp sit? Righto, do you really think Dylan Brown is a 7? Can he play there? All those things. And again, the other one is, of course, is just what we're talking about. You know, we're not going to have a top 5 pack of forwards. You know, how do we get away with that? You know, what do you think we have to do? I think all those things. I mean, there's a lot of things to do. I saw Joey on the TV last night. I reckon it's the best I've ever heard him talk about the club, and he just spoke about how big the club was, how big a job they need to do going forward. And he said it's not just a first grade side. He said if you're you're going to go there as a first grade coach. He said you've got to have your hands on the pathways. You've got to be coaching the coaches, all those sort of things. This is, and I think Joey finished with saying his last words were, mate, the Gold Coast Titans job is a kindergarten job compared to what you got to do at Newcastle.
Wow,
that's what his last words were. And you know, I thought he was. I think he was very forthright, but I think he hit the nail right on the head. There's a lot of candidates up. They've just got to. They put it this way. I wrote about it today. They cannot just hand the job to somebody. You know, well, but of course you get very rare coaches that might come along. I mean, they're not available. I'm talking about blokes like Bellamy and so on and so forth. There's certain blokes you don't need to interview. You just chase them and give them the job. But I think the candidates here is, there was talk that Blake Green is the front runner. At one point they're saying that, you know, it's his job. Well, that's crazy. You just don't hand someone who's inexperienced like Blake without going through a whole interview and then sitting down and interviewing other guys and examining what they can do and what they can bring to the team. And with Blake's situation, I mean, he was the attack coach there. You've got to look at that. He's the attack coach. They're looking at having the worst attack in, you know, since 1998, the NRL. You know, since the NRL was brought in 98, you know, you've got to consider that. You've also got to consider the fact that he's not an experienced coach. Right? You look away from the X's and O's boys. You know, and I think the thing that is starting to define coaches more than ever is the ability to handle the intense pressure, which gets more and more fierce every year from media, from fans and whatnot. So all of those things they've got to throw in, and they just got to make sure they've got to make sure it's a great interview process. And when they get the bloke thereafter, they've got to know that he knows his football, that he can retain players, that he can attract players, and he can handle pressure, being the big one. Because in Newcastle, mate, I'm telling you, it's a furnace. When you walk out the door, you walk down the street to get the paper or the fish and chips or whatever, every person wants to ask you about the team. Why aren't they winning? Why isn't this bloke being picked? You know, why aren't you playing as good as you were a month ago? You know, and even for an experienced coach, that can consume you. But a bloke who hasn't got a lot of experience, well, you've got to make sure he's the right man for the job.
Yeah, and going back, and my next question too, Matty, you know, and I sort of suggest this, and in no way am I attempting to kick a man when he's down and going through a tough time like Adam O'Brien. But whenever I hear you or Joey or even some past teammates or mates of mine that play for Newcastle, how big of a job it is at Newcastle and embracing the fans, I sort of look back to those comments that he regrettably said. You know, he had the press conference the next day. I feel like at that point, maybe it'd become the whole juggernaut of Newcastle would become too much for him. To even slip up in that manner and then have to work it back, I feel like, in my opinion, Matty, that was probably the beginning of the end for Adam O'Brien's reign at Newcastle.
Yeah, you could be right there, Scope. It's a hard comment to take back, particularly when you grow up in that area, mate. From when you're a young kid, before you learn the Bible, you're reading Rugby League Week, right? And you learn, you talk to, younger blokes up in Newcastle. They know who Johnny Raper is. They know who Reg Gasnier is. Clive Churchill. The history of the game. You know it inside out. And yeah, they're incredible supporters. It's such a tight community. When we used to play there, I used to be able to run out on a Sunday. I'd look around the ground, and there were the same people in the same seats. And you get to know a lot of them. You go, there's Barry and Rita Peak there. There's so-and-so over there. They're all sort of there. It is a really, really tight community, and it's a tight supporter base. And, yeah, you're right. I mean, they were comments that as soon as I reckon they went out of Adam's mouth, he would have went away, in the heat of the moment and just go, geez, what have I done there? But fair play to him. He got there the next day and he came out. He's big enough to apologise, but you're probably right there, Scope.
Hey, Matty, can I ask you this? So they're going to have to, no matter which way you go. Like Scopey even suggested, which I don't hate. Kalen potentially could handle maybe 7, but certainly they're looking at Dylan Brown as a 7. So no matter what, they have to manufacture a 7. So with that in mind, does that give former halves Willie Peters and Justin Holbrook a significant edge, would you say, in this process?
Look, I think it probably does. I think what goes in their favour is I reckon, boys, if I was a young coach coming through, I don't think I'd. I think it can be troublesome just going from New South Wales Cup or being an assistant straight into the head coaching job. I really like the Michael Maguire, Trent Robinson path where you go to England, and mate, you learn your mistakes. You make your mistakes over there and you learn from them. And
Christian
it,
Wolf,
it
Matty.
doesn't.
Christian
Wolf, perfect example. And look, the pressure's not the same, but there's. By the same token, they over there at the English Super League, they haven't got anywhere near the support staff and the things around them, the head coach, like they have here. So the head coaches, your head coach over there, you're working really hard, mate. You're working really hard in recruitment, in retention. You're doing a lot of stuff that you don't need to do out here that's looked after. And the fact that Willie's gone over there in a club, Hull KR, that was really struggling when he got there and has done an unbelievable job. But the other thing in Willie's favour is this. Now, I don't know if you blokes would have been, for people that don't know, when you go to Hull, Hull is one of the great rugby league cities of the world. And Hull KR, which Willie coached, when they play Hull FC, I'm telling you now, it is a bigger, more spiteful rivalry than Bunnies versus Roosters.
Oh, wow.
You look through the history of the game, some of the things that have gone on between those two sets of fans, and still to this day, it is serious hatred. And for Willie to be over there in that furnace, with that sort of pressure going on, and achieve what he's done, I think says a lot about Willie. And same thing go with Justin Holbrook. Right? You look at Justin Holbrook. He went to St Helens. He collected titles. He was an 80% success rate over there. And oftentimes, boys, I reckon you can probably, sometimes in hindsight, you best judge a job that a coach has done at a place. And I reckon we look back now at Justin Holbrook and what he was doing at the Titans, and you go, well, he was actually doing a pretty good job. Mm. So I think those two blokes are strong contenders. Brian McDermott, he has a lot of admirers up there in Newcastle. He's well liked by the players, and BMac has had success as a coach in England, had a lot of success over there as a player and a coach, and he's looked after the defence here, and the defence, up until the last month, the defence has been strong. That's been probably the strong point of their football. So he'd be in the mix. There's probably a few blokes left at centre, and I tell you now, boys, a bloke that never, ever gets spoken about, and I'm not saying he is he's the right man for the job here, any way, shape or form. But, John Strange, who coaches, mate, the Roosters girl in NRLW, I've said to people before, if I was at a club and I'm looking to have some sort of coach, whether it's a right-hand man to someone, mate, I honestly, I hear that many good things about him. I hear great things about his ability to manage players. Tactically, he's very good. And regardless if it's NRLW or NRL, it's coaching. The principles are all the same. So I'm not putting him up for the nice job or anything like that. I'm just saying, if you're looking to, look left of centre, then you look at a bloke like that. Just because he's coaching NRLW doesn't mean anything. You're coaching football.
Yep. Mark from Crestmead asked the exact same thing. Yeah. Would you take the interview with Michael Checker? Would you just want to have him in front of you?
Bloody oath.
Yeah.
I'd interview everyone. You're the same, Matty, aren't you? Like, it doesn't really feel like you're set on anyone in particular. Are you set on anyone in particular, or are you just, you want to see as many people as possible?
Probably the two, Scope, that I'd put a circle around at this point would be Willie Peters and Justin Holbrook. They're the two that I'd put the circle around and would think from my angle to be favourites. But a bloke like Michael Checker, mate, you interview him. Like I said before, man management and the ability to handle pressure is two of the primary things of why other coaches fail. I know coaches can be very, very good tactically and everything like that, have good tactical nows, but they struggle to manage strong personalities, and they just struggle for the pressure. The moment they lose 2 and 3 in a row, they oftentimes we see coaches fall to bits. Chris Anderson used to say, it doesn't matter who you are. You don't know what type of coach you are until you've lost 3 in a row, and you've got to find your way out. And some coaches just don't.
I think going into this, even chatting before you, Matty, I wasn't really set on anyone in particular. But after chatting to you and hearing the comparisons between the working class towns of Hull and Newcastle, and then Sugar talking about the halves, I feel like Willie Peters is starting to become the favourite for me, just sitting and listening to, just absorbing this conversation.
And Scope, and for Willie, if you put the ball in Willie's court, Willie'd have a big decision to make. He's on a trajectory with Hull and Hull KR, and he's got them flying really well. Willie might look at Newcastle and go, mate, look at the cap and look, the money that some players are on, and the shortfall in forwards, and just go, you know what, boys, I don't think this is the job for me. There's a little bit of that too. I know a lot of players, a lot of coaches are just desperate to coach, but by the same token, a young coach like Willie Peters who's looking for that first crack, you've got to be careful what job you take. But for me, Holbrook, Willie Peters, they're the two that I think are the front runners.
Beautiful, Matty. We'll hear more of this from you tomorrow from 9 o'clock. Morning Glory. Cracking show, mate. Appreciate your time on this Thursday afternoon.
Good on you, Shug. Thanks, Cope.
Thanks,
there
Matty.
It is. Yeah, well, you got it there, folks. That was terrific from Matty. Morning Glory with Matthew Johns tomorrow at 9 a.m. on SEN. You're listening to The Run Home with Joel and Fletch. What, you're still here? Well, you can see more on the Joel and Fletch socials and catch us live on SEN Radio, you beautiful humans.